Welcome back to the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG Plc. I'm your host, Steve McAllister. When someone mentions a startup company, my first thoughts are of a group of recent college or university graduates huddling around a whiteboard or on Google Meet, chugging Red Bull and beating the bushes in search of investors. Okay, maybe that's a little too stereotypical. Our guests on this episode of the Gaming News Canada show are the antithesis of what we just described. When Defy The Odds launched last September, it did so as the brainchild of three highly acclaimed, highly respected, and highly experienced gambling industry veterans who got together to create a business aimed at lending a hand to the next generation of entrepreneurs in the sports wagering and gaming space. So, we welcome back to the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG Plc, honorary GNCS member Sue Schneider, and making their maiden appearances on the podcast are Sue's fellow co-founders of Defy The Odds, Kelly Kehn and Paris Smith. Hey, Kelly and Paris, it's so great to finally get you both on. Kelly, you and I have spoken a few times over the past 4 years, and so I'm glad we're able to finally get you on board here from the United Kingdom.
Likewise, Steve. Thanks for having me.
And Paris, I've kind of seen you across rooms and on various panels at conferences over the past 4 years, and so I feel a little sheepish that this is the first time we've actually had a chance to meet each other.
Yeah, well, I will say that I am a recovering CEO, as Sue likes to call it. So I think I was probably, in the corner. Being quiet.
She is a hard one to speak to as well because everyone knows her, so she gets a lot of interest.
Yeah, Sue, maybe I'll start with you as kind of the elder statesman of this platform.
In more ways than one, I would say.
I didn't say that. Hey, so I just want to start with the three of you, like as I mentioned, you've had great careers in this industry. I think Paris retired last summer as a longtime CEO of Pinnacle after almost 20 years, which is an incredible run. Kelly's had her fingers in different pies in the industry for the better part of 2 decades as well. And you let it be known last year, Sue, too, that you were stepping away from the work you had done on behalf of SBC. I think our listeners and viewers always like to hear the stories of how these companies come together and how this trio came together. So Sue, maybe I'll start with you and we'll go with that.
Sure. Well, collectively, we've got 80 years in the business, which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. So Paris and I have known each other a very, very, very long time. I've known Kelly for a very long time also, but not quite as long. But so we've been involved with a number of things. For example, there are women's groups. Kelly and I, during COVID, started this SheEOs group, which is female, very top leaders. And so we've been involved with that and have supported each other in our efforts in that regard. Paris, when she was at Pinnacle, had a heavily female management team, which was always one to point to and say, this is how you do it. We all found ourselves last year, or kind of the end of the year before, looking at transitions. And so probably, I guess it was March or April, Paris said, come down to Curacao, let's talk. And so we went down there. We knew we wanted to be involved with, diversity. We knew we wanted to be involved with startups. So we were talking about what each one of us was interested in as we were in Paris's pool looking out at the Caribbean and having some Prosecco's and with a whiteboard. And so we started just kind of putting up what our particular interests are and our mission as we saw it in the next phase for each one of us. And the next thing we knew, we were like, oh, we should just be doing this together. So it's been really interesting, I think, to get started and to see how much in sync we are and how much of a need there is. I mean, I think over the years, we've seen, particularly when it comes to female founders of startups, there haven't been a lot. Out of the SheEO group last year, we actually had, I think, 3 that did exits. So, there's starting to be some critical mass in that regard. But there's a long way to go. So we wanted to just kind of pool our, as Kelly likes to call it, our social capital to help kind of short circuit where some of these really, really good ideas and great founders are trying to navigate their way through the industry.
Hey Paris, I think you just announced your retirement last June or early July from Pinnacle, which I guess isn't retirement, just that you were stepping down. Did you expect to jump this quickly into a venture like Defy the Odds, or had you seen maybe just doing some consulting and advising across a whole bunch of companies?
I was hoping for a small break. And then I realized after 30 years of working 12 hours a day plus and 6, 7 days a week, you can't just stop. So, it started out where I was just talking to people, because when I was with Pinnacle, I was so focused. If it wasn't Pinnacle-esque, I didn't want to look at it. And I missed a lot of great stuff, to be honest. And I see some of those people that I passed on having these big stands now, and it's so exciting to see. So, being able to sit and have the opportunity to talk to people. I started with the angel investing kind of by accident, and then going in and seeing that the need for what Sue and Kelly and I are doing with Defy the Odds, that was something that really came to the forefront. People need help to be set up for success. And with the networks that we have, the communities that we have, the resources that we have, we really can help them propel forward and at least really give them a fighting chance, especially for the marginalized entrepreneur.
Kelly, this kind of feels like familiar territory for me. I mean, you were involved with Happy Hour IO and then the All in Diversity project. So, you certainly have had recent history with mentoring and working with young companies or helping companies find funding. I guess what attracted you to get involved with Sue and Paris in this venture?
Yeah. Listen, leveling the playing field in particular in iGaming is where my North Star is, right? There's inequality everywhere, but I've been working on that since I think 2017 when we started All in Diversity Project, right? And that mission was to make sure businesses were aware, understood the business case, and were working towards more equality and inclusion within their workforces, because it makes the industry a lot better, right? This particular initiative is, for me, one step further, and we're actually working with the people, impacting the people who need it most, who are starting their own companies, who are going to bring innovation to the space, because we're never going to have, true innovation unless we have those different perspectives. At least that's what I believe, right? We've got to have people from all backgrounds coming in with their ideas and serving different markets if we're going to be a sustainable industry. And then with Happy Hour, obviously, yeah, you see, as many startups and pitches as you can, right? And I just didn't see enough female and minority founders coming through, right? I don't think they're incapable. I think that they're just not being spoken to the same way other groups are and introduced to the same networks that others are, right? I think a lot of people don't realize that it's a real privilege to know investors in the space or experts in the space or people who are willing to help connect them, right? So that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do.
Hey, Paris, I wasn't sure how much you want to get in this topic, but when Sue mentioned your heavily female skewed management team during your time at Pinnacle, and we had Tiana Kerr and Catherine Mead from OLG on the show back last fall talking about DEI, and obviously we're seeing what's going on in the world right now. You're born and raised in North Dakota, and we have both Sue and Kelly have U.S. connections. We see what's going on in the U.S. right now with the Trump administration. Is it more important or more of a passion project for you than ever to get them to continue this path on diversity and to help find a lane for women to get into this industry?
Yeah, I think for all diversity, I'm very passionate about. I've never tried to hit numbers. I just always got the best people for the job. And I think if you take away bias and if you really break it down and look at how you can take a team and if you have everybody the same in the room, you're not going to make any progress. So, not only did I have more than half women than men. But it was also, we had somebody from the Asian market. We had somebody, or everybody was different. I was the only white woman there, right? So we really took it to the next level, only because these were the most qualified and most talented people. And I just feel like, when I'm interviewing people, I don't see anything except for quality, competency, and capability. And that clearly isn't the choice all the time, and we also unearthed a bunch of biases within the different job descriptions and different management areas. Our marketing guy in the thing, it was like, wants to hang out and have a beer and watch the game after work. Well, some people have kids and a family, but they're still as qualified and as productive and creative at work as anybody else. So, it's really just to open that up. But definitely, I've always been the only woman in the room. And, this experience with Sue and Kelly, it's really opened up my eyes. Like I didn't understand. I mean, I'm learning every day with them, and their passion is so deep. When I look at it, I'm like, oh gosh, there really is something there. But I didn't even notice I was the only woman in the room. So that was a bit of a shift for me. I live in the Caribbean, so I also noticed there's no African Americans in the room. And so again, I'm looking at all of the diversity, but focusing not focusing on diversity, but just looking at quality and qualification. What's happening in the US, I think we can all just be smarter and aware. And that was one of our original missions. Let's just bring awareness to people because they don't even realize. And, if we can do that and help propel people forward and guide them, then I think that's part of what the success of what Defy the Odds is trying to do.
Sue, you and I have had several conversations about women in this industry, and I think the stereotype back in the day was, a woman might work in HR or they might work in marketing, or they would be an executive assistant. On this show now, we talk an awful lot about data and technology and engineering, and it feels like we can't get through a podcast without artificial intelligence being brought up. And I just wonder, have you seen a shift, and are you seeing a shift with Defy the Odds, where you are seeing more women in positions, executive suite people or engineers or data experts? Are we seeing a shift in the skill set of women coming into this industry?
Well, I'm not sure it's a shift in the skill set, but the numbers are going up, I will say. I mean, Kelly and I, through CEOs, again, when we started that, maybe 2020, and we had identified maybe 30, 40 women that fit the 6 titles that we have, MD, GM, CEO, whatever, the very, very top, not even the next C-level down. And we've now identified 160 globally, which is both a great number and still needs work. So, it's definitely improved from what it was. We still have a way to go. I mean, when you look at the numbers, like, for example, with startups, Forbes throws out the number of 4% of VC funds go to women. It's probably less than that, to be honest. But, those are the kind of things that we're trying to look at, more institutional biases that are out there, really. And to that end, we're hoping to work with some of the larger companies in the industry. Not many of them have innovation teams. Some do. And the other thing that we want to do, that we wanted to share, was that we're starting a community for startups, not just the ones we're working with, but all of them, because we want to tie together and be that glue for the investors, for the subject matter experts, for the suppliers, for the regulators, all that, to be able to get them all to come together to help support more innovation. I mean, one of the issues, I think, as when I got into it and when Paris got into it, it wasn't very regulated. It was way back.
Right.
And so now it's highly regulated, to the point where, particularly if you take US as an example, if somebody comes in, we're working with someone who's a different kind of fantasy sports audience. And, if he wants to go into, say, 20 states, that's 20 application fees. That's 20 sets of taxes. I mean, there are all those things that have grown up now in the industry and how it's evolved that it really stifle innovation. So part of it is looking at what we can do institutionally to try to kind of make it easier for some of these folks to come in.
Hey, Kelly, do you want to chime in too, just on that, you know, the types of jobs that are available for women in the industry now compared to when you first got into it?
Sure. I talk about this a lot. And when we started back in 2017 talking about, you know, women in leadership, let's say, that was a big risk. That was a big risk for the women who are moving up into leadership, right? Because you're sacrificing a lot of time, as Paris said, 12 hours a day. You know, reputationally, we weren't sure what that was going to look like. You obviously get, you know, you're the only person in the room, that sort of thing. That's a big risk. Entrepreneurship is the next level because now your time and your money and your full career reputation is on the line, right? And it ends with you, right? And I think it will take some time and it will take more role models out there to move more people into that, to de-risk it. And I think there's a lot, you know, conversations like these are really important, you know, because it's not that you can't do it. And the benefits are, you know, I would say wildly outweigh, you know, the risk that it is. But when you're in the moment, when you're thinking about it, and when other people, you know, especially people you care about, are giving you their opinion, it's hard to see that, right? And it's hard to believe in yourself. And I think one of the things that, you know, we all have been doing our whole entire careers, but that we're trying to do formally with Defy the Odds is bring that belief, right? And have that safe, you know, landing area, right? Where you can say, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. I don't know if it's going to work, you know, in all those types of things, right? And have that, let's say, board or group behind you that's, you know, sort of challenging you, but also supporting you along the way.
We always like on this podcast when there's a little bit of, you know, quote, breaking news. And Kelly, we noticed on your LinkedIn page this morning that that Defy the Odds has a new partnership with QueenBHive, which, you know, one is just such a cool name, a PR and marketing agency. And I think QueenBHive is actually up for some awards in the Starties, the startup award show that Jesse Learmont and Travis Geiger from WagerWire are putting together for the next conference in New York next month. Maybe Kelly, just talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that the company has already, and you know, where this kind of support that the company's providing.
Sure. We've been waiting a long time to start announcing some of our partners. It's been a long time coming, but not for not having people that we're working with. The particular one, QueenBHive, is an incredible partnership. Rebecca, who's the CEO there, she's been a member of CEOs for a while. She started, I met her back when she was at PokerStars. And there was, this is back in the day, 2019, 2020, there was all kinds of chatter, mostly in the poker community, but wider, about the unsafe environment that poker was creating for women. And that was down to a couple influencers who were very misogynistic and even quite threatening to some degree. And PokerStars, namely Rebecca, was leading the way with making that a safe environment for women to come in and play. So we sort of vibed then. She's got her own branding agency. She launched it while she was on maternity leave with her second child. You know, all the things that, you know, role modeling what we want others to be able to see she's doing. On her own, bootstrapping, you know, making it happen for herself. There's another, you know, we're working with, I think 6 at the moment, building kind of a niche in women's sport, which is really exciting. Women's sport as a product and also as a customer base, women's who are fans or everyone who's fans of women's sport. We're working with a new startup that is launching a fantasy app. It's called LFG, Let's Fantasy Game, and it's a fantasy app for specifically for women's sport. There's a startup that is an all-female team leading a AI-driven compliance piece of technology that's supporting compliance resources within companies, giving them sort of real time and accuracy in their role, which as Sue alluded to. in a highly regulated industry is very tough to do, and it's very expensive. So this is kind of an AI co-pilot for compliance, which is really exciting. Working a little bit in sweeps. We're also working with a banking application that is very innovative. It's called Edge Boost. I'm not sure if you've met them yet, Steve, but you will soon, I'm sure. They're working specifically in the US, but it's a banking application that is dedicated just for gambling transactions. And it has a lot of responsibility built into it and a lot of KYC and compliance built into it as well, which is pretty exciting.
Hey, gaming news guys! Are you ready to win a bigger share of Canada's rapidly expanding gaming market? Then GBG are ready to help. As the global leaders in identity verification, GBG partner with over 60% of iGaming Ontario brands to help them onboard more players, maximize match rates, and deliver FinTrack compliance. Visit gbgplc.com today and talk to the trust experts. Paris, Sue mentioned a few minutes ago, and Kelly touched on too, the innovation piece. And I just wonder, what kind of gets you most excited these days when you hear the word innovation in the gaming industry?
It's well, of course, the AI, anything that's going to make the experience for the user better. Those are the types of things that I love. And I also am really into, from a private investor perspective, a lot of the media, because, marketing is not the same as it used to be. And companies that have marketing departments, they generally are not massively successful. You need to have a social media strategy. It's all about the strategy, not the marketing manager role. So those types of things I get super excited about. But, just even a little bit beyond that, the ecosystem, the community that we were referring to earlier, these are things that are going to allow this innovation to occur and continue. Because right now, that support group for startups and for people that have these great ideas, they may not have the best idea, but by the time they go through 6 or 7 different investors, and if they're listening and tweaking and finding out what's actually really needed, it's becoming, it can create some pretty amazing products and increase the quality of the innovation. And I've always said for the last probably 10 years, because I have a daughter who's 25, the great ideas are not going to come from the boardroom. We have no clue what the future wants. So until we start, tapping into this, we're not going to know what the next greatest thing is. So that part of, and that's where those younger entrepreneurs are super exciting for me.
Hey, Sue, do you want to add to that? Oh, go ahead, Kelly. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, to that point, one of the things where we see real opportunity is bringing the whole iGaming community closer to that startup ecosystem, right? Having them be active participants with startups. It's not just the 3 of us. It's not just other advisors or accelerators or incubators out there. But, if we're going to get there, if we want to be sustainable, and by sustainable, I mean last a very long time and continue to grow and improve, is, we have to get closer to that. We have to understand what their needs are, but we also have to understand where their thinking is at, right? It's gaming right now is deaf to how much it costs for a startup to get into this space. They're unwilling to support, startups or scale with them, right? And we're chipping away at that, right? Making sure that we're speaking to the larger firms, but that community is really going to start to be a sounding board for those types of issues, right? Because we're not going to get good products if we're making ourselves unaffordable and unavailable.
Well, and I think the concept of having to continue to evolve and pivot being the operative word that we hear all the time. We've pivoted with this company. We started out wanting to do a fund. Now we found out what that entails. We started out wanting to do an incubator. Then we found out what that entails. So what we're doing is being kind of the glue instead, and making sure that we can channel in into that ecosystem some new faces. So the whole idea of having to be flexible and continuing to really fine-tune things in a way that you really are creating an answer to a problem is the one probably theme that we continue to have with the folks we're working with.
Is that, Sue, is that shift in strategy, was that a surprise to you, where you kind of locked into doing something for a while, and then all of a sudden the three of you realize, hey, this isn't where we want to be?
Well, it's funny because I always tell people, they ask how I got into the business, and I always say a series of flukes. And that's true. I mean, I am not a good personal planner at all, and whatever gets in the way, if I can go in and try to maximize it and take advantage of it, that's what I do. And so that's kind of how things have evolved here. But I think the set of interventions really that we're able to offer at this point is maybe not where we initially thought. I mean, we need to go back and look at that whiteboard and say, okay, well, this we're still doing, we're doing it better. This one we've jettisoned. So, and that's probably going to continue, and that's the way it should be with a company. If you're not flexible, you're going to die.
Paris, I'll start with you here. I've always liked to try to get names into this show, and I just wonder the kind of mentors that you had when you entered the business. And again, the three of you mentioned, and I've had similar conversations with other women in this industry. It's been a tough nut to crack at times, especially if you made your start like the three of you did 20, 25 years ago. But I do wonder if there were some people who really were good mentors to you as you worked your way up the ladder.
Yeah. I was always fortunate to work for good people. Like, they hired me because they wanted they wanted, Pinnacle said, we want somebody that doesn't have an ego, who can manage a bunch of personalities. And, so I've always had the people that I worked for give me great support. But what's, kind of most special about Defy the Odds for me is one of my biggest mentors and go-to people for literally 30 years is Sue. So now to be able to work directly with her, it's literally living the dream. So, but she was probably one of the most influential. I had another lady in Antigua. She did a lot of training for the company that I ran there called WWTS. Shirley Nibbs. She was another person who just really kind of helped me level up to, like, okay, you can do this. You have to be viewed as a leader, because I started out as a clerk taking bets. Now you have to reposition yourself and, not wear t-shirts and shorts to work every day, wear a suit. I was 25 years old. I'm like, oh my God, where am I going to get a suit? So anyway, but she kind of helped guide me and lead me. And then, the other mentors that I had were my parents. They were phenomenal.
Kelly?
Yeah, I echo the same. I think I've had a lot of good people along the way. I think you also have a couple people that, maybe guide you by doing something, that shocks you and, takes you in the other direction as well, right? But my first job, I worked for the Jockey Club. I worked in horse racing. And I had the best boss of literally, probably to date. He was the greatest. And I worked in communications, but I got to learn every aspect of this business, including breeding, and media and, racing and all those things. Right. So I think, my love for getting involved in all aspects of a business really comes from that. Right. And set my curiosity sort of on the right track. Besides these two who, obviously I trust completely, and I thank, God every day that I get to work with them, because it's a pleasure. But there's another woman in the industry who I think Sue introduced me to. Her name's Holly Gagnon, and I don't know. I think I got introduced to her because she needed to do Zoom or something. She needed to do Zoom for like 1 million people, and I was at SBC and I was doing Zoom during COVID for like 1 million people, and I was like, yeah, I'll help you. But then as I started working, which is very easy, right? Like, we got her sorted right away, no problem. But but it never ended. She was like, oh, I just want to talk to you about something else. And, how's this going? And all these things. And I'm not sure I ever asked her to mentor me, but now she's like, for me, she's one of my go-to people, right? She is always there. And it's really sort of funny how you get involved, I guess, in the lives, or, they take an interest in your life, which I think is how that mentorship should be, right? Those people who have genuine interest in seeing you succeed.
Yeah. Sue?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. When I go back to the beginning, there were a couple of good friends of mine that I would have to say definitely played that role with me. One was in '96, we started the Interactive Gaming Council to basically try to fight prohibition bills, that the Kyle bill in the US and all this kind of stuff. We would have meetings. We had 120 members, amazingly enough. And we would have meetings at various, we go to G2E, we go to ICE, we'd have meetings, we'd have 100 people in the room. There were 3 women, myself, Ruth Parasol, who owned Party Poker, and 1 or 2 other women who were, working with some of the other operators. And I've always been amazed at what Ruth has accomplished over the years. And, as she went on, then she was building a family while she had the business. And, she continues to do amazing things. So she's one. I have 2 friends who were the principals at Golden Palace, who lent me $30,000 to start the first Gigsy, which I paid them back within like 3 months. But those kind of friendships, and I'm still, keep in touch with them to a certain extent. But I think more recently, there's a woman by the name of Virginia McDowell, who was a CEO of one of the regional land-based gaming companies here. And, it's funny because she has some great stories. She worked for Trump Casinos at one point, so she's got a whole story about that. But she was one of the founders, one of the key founder, really, with Global Gaming Women, raised a whole bunch of money to give them, a good foundation the first few years. And, and she's local, actually. She lives in my town. So I remember asking her one time at lunch, it's like, how did you raise all that money? She goes, I just told the boys they had to ante up to support this effort. So, those kind of things are the kind of things that I really take lessons from. And that's what, hopefully we can all, as we grow older, impart that to younger folks that are coming up in the industry.
Hey, before we let you go, I would love to get the 3 of you, your thoughts on what's going on in the U.S. and Canada right now. Maybe start with the U.S. first. And, Paris, Sue shares a lot of content on her Twitter page and on LinkedIn. And it just seems the U.S. I guess it's probably as chaotic as the Trump presidency right now, where we've got there's sweepstakes. There's still the bun fight going on with DFS. There's crypto betting going on. We see what Kalshi and Robinhood is doing with sports betting. Still efforts to expand legal iGaming beyond, I think it's 7 states right now across the U.S. Just start with you, Paris. Just your thoughts on what's going on in the U.S. or what's top of mind for you.
Yeah, I find the whole sweepstakes thing very intriguing, considering I used to sit in my office in Curacao watching FanDuel and DraftKings take a beautiful opportunity of a loophole for fantasy and create these absolutely phenomenal monster companies that they're thriving in. And now you have these other sweepstakes companies taking an advantage of another wonderful loophole, and everybody's trying to stomp it down, because the reality is I think they could be the biggest contenders to them. So that part I'm kind of watching, eating some popcorn and giggling about all the time. It's a little bit annoying. Everything starts from something, right? But in any case, so there's that part with the sweepstakes. And then, just like with the crypto and everything, if regulators can't move with the times, they're going to unintentionally move business to the gray market. So either they're going to have to come on board and get it right and regulate it, so people that want to do these things can have that opportunity. If until they are ready to step up and do that, they're going to be pushing people either offshore or gray market, whatever you want to call it. So those are my thoughts on those 2 specific areas.
Kelly?
I'll agree with a lot of that and add that, I think in a lot of cases, a lot of the arguments or the rhetoric that's happening out there, we seem to have lost sight of the customer. And all these arguments seem a bit, I don't know, childish maybe, because we aren't really talking about how we can make this industry better, or how we can contribute to the entertainment value. As Paris said, I think regulation is desperately behind, what's happening on the new product innovation side of things. I think a lot of people are talking out both sides of their mouth, because, as Paris said, they were happy to get on board with DraftKings and FanDuel. Well, now we're not so happy with the other side of the coin. And again, we're still losing, what does the customer want? There is a want and a need. And how do we take care of that customer and still give them the entertainment value that they are desiring? I think that's a more meaningful conversation than trying to stomp someone down or, belittle whatever's happening, right? Because it's going to happen if that's what the customer wants.
Sue?
Well, I'm a policy wonk at heart, so I love the legislative and the regulatory side of things and just find it fascinating. And I remember, like, in the late 90s, there was a New Zealand regulator who wrote a great paper, which I still have, basically saying that in the internet, it's different than land-based because of the technical innovations and things like that. It's always going to have to be a partnership between the regulators and the industry. And he made some really, really good points with that paper. And I think that's what we're seeing is the inability really for the industry to kind of, and the regulators in particular, to keep up with what the new things are. And so to a certain extent, I get kind of a kick out of it because everybody thinks they're going to revolutionize the industry. And then when they do, they kind of catch hell for it with a variety of people that are more, institutionalized at this point, where they might not have been institutionalized 7-10 years ago. So it's been fascinating to watch. I don't really get into taking a position one way or the other with it because I don't have any sway, but watching what both the legislators are doing. And that's why I love to go to Nickel G's meetings to see what they're thinking and how they see sorting some of this kind of stuff out. But this industry has always taken advantage of loopholes, always, and probably will continue because of that gap in the lag time between what a policymaker and a regulator will be able to keep up with in terms of new innovations. So.
But it's all industries take advantage of loopholes. We're not unique in that regard.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, my background as a sports journalist, we see that in professional sport leagues with collective bargaining agreements. When as soon as the ink's not even dry yet, and general managers and agents are already looking for loopholes to get around the system and get an athlete more money or save a team more money. I think the gambling industry, just quickly, it's complicated because these aren't federal mandates. They're on a province by province or state by state basis, and that's a real that puts a few more ingredients into the soup. It just and I'll let the three of you fight over this last question, and that's just is there a Canadian strategy for Defy the Odds? And perhaps you're already doing business with someone in Canada, but would love to get your thoughts on that.
Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a couple groups that I'm dealing with in Canada. I think we're dealing with one of them as well. The Canadian market is so, first of all, they did a phenomenal job, I believe, in Ontario. Their approach to the regulation and rolling out regulation, a lot of people could learn great things from. But now they need to start rolling it out, and then they're going to see the advantages to that. But, there's so much innovation. I mean, Vancouver, there's always been great companies coming out of Vancouver and Quebec. Yeah, so I feel like, they have a lot of opportunities. A lot of great things are going to come from it. Even the betting startups that started in Vancouver, Vancouver Island, I believe. So, there's just so much. They have such a large community, and they're always surrounding, they're always meeting and just kind of inspiring each other. So I feel like the Canadian market's an amazing market, and it's something I watch very closely.
I think it will be interesting to see how and when the other provinces decide to privatize some. I mean, we've seen this in Europe with the lotteries. You have a monopoly. Nobody wants to give that up. Is that the best thing for the player? Getting back to Kelly's point, those are the kind of questions that need to come into play, because the more is competition better than having a monopoly. But then you have just political discussions and things like that have to come into play. I was hopeful that we were going to see Alberta move forward. That kind of got stymied maybe this year. I don't know if BC's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to watch in terms of when some of these other dominoes fall in terms of privatizing some of that.
Hey, Kelly, as a spouse of a Canadian, we'll give you the last word.
Thank you. Listen, all those things I agree with. I also think, we have such a iGaming, once you get into it, is a lot smaller than you think, right? And we have such a global focus. We don't really focus on various markets. We're looking for all the ideas that are out there. We're looking for all the startups that are out there. And I think there's a lot of companies, as these ladies have said, leading the way in Canada. We have some partnerships. Obviously we work with a lot of Canadian companies where possible, but I don't think we think of it as that, right? I think we just sort of think as, they're good companies doing what they're supposed to be doing in gaming. So be exciting to see what's happening. Yeah. As it grows.
Kelly Kehn, Sue Schneider, and Paris Smith are the co-founders of Defy the Odds. For more information on the company, you can go to dtolaunchpad.com. Sue, always great to see you. Paris and Kelly, so glad that we finally got you on the podcast, and really appreciate your insight. It's wish you a lot of luck with Defy the Odds, and look forward to seeing you hopefully at the Canadian Gaming Summit in June, or perhaps the SBC Summit Americas in Fort Lauderdale this spring.
Great. Thanks, you, Steve.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show, presented by GBG Plc. You can find us at gamingnewscanada.ca and also on the GNC YouTube channel. Thanks again to Kelly, Sue, and Paris for being on the podcast today, and we will see everybody again very soon.